Ethan, welcome to the Quantum Health Connection podcast.
Thank you
So
for
excited
having
to
me.
have, yeah, so excited to have you here and learn about your story. I've been following you on Instagram. That's where I found you. And I was like, oh, we have to get Ethan on. He's got some good information here. I love everything you're putting out. And I was like, I love it. So how did you get into the quantum space and how long have you been in it? Like, because your level of knowledge is pretty deep. And I feel like you're kind of a newcomer in this space. Is that true? Or has it been a while? Tell me.
Yeah, good question. I would say I've only really been doing like my Instagram for maybe 7 or 8 months, but I was probably looking into this stuff for maybe 3-ish years, maybe like four. So I've been kind of looking into it for a while, and then at some point, one of my friends was just like, "You should just start Instagram and like just like turn it like into actual business." So that's kind of like I was basically just like spending my time and like reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts. And I think what actually really grew my Instagram was like my book reviews. That's like a couple of them went viral, and that's how I got most of my followers actually. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to get as much growth as I did early on, but I was looking into this stuff for a while, probably since like 2023-ish, I want to say, something along those lines. But just to give you like a background about like what made me interested in this stuff in the first place, I would say like so my educational background is I have like a master's in nutrition and I am a registered dietitian, but like not a whole like some people ask about it, but not a whole lot of what I learned in school applies, or basically none of it actually really applies. Like maybe some like foundational like biochemistry might play a role, but it's not really super relevant. Like maybe to like understand some studies better or stuff like that. Like you learn some basic statistics, you learn like research methods, stuff like that. So like I think like
Mhm.
general classes like that may
Yeah.
have played like a role and like I can read like a book and like understand it better. I can read a study and understand it better. But besides that, there wasn't like a whole lot I learned in school. But I would say like going back even further, like what happened was my parents were always like into the like food and nutrition stuff.
Nice.
Neither of them were like born in the US, so they were kind of just chasing like flavor. Like if you ever had like a real tomato versus like a tomato in like December, like it's not even like it just tastes like water versus like it has flavor. So by looking for like food that actually tastes better, you end up going to farmers markets, you start drinking raw milk, you buy like grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and so on and so forth. So like even when I was like a kid, like there was always like an emphasis on like good food. And on top of that, I wrestled my whole life. I ended up wrestling in college, so I was always an athlete. So like the exercise stuff was always covered as well. So I was like interested in the food. Wrestling is also weight class sport, meaning like nutrition and food plays like a much bigger role than it would in other sports. Like if you're playing football, for example, like yeah, you're trying to eat healthy most of the time, but it doesn't really matter as long as like you're maintaining your weight. You can get away with stuff a lot more. But if you're trying to make weight and you have to be a certain weight, like on a Saturday morning, like your months leading up to that is it plays a role. So like the food part was always a huge deal, and then exercise. I mean, if you're an athlete, like you're lifting weights, you're running, you're going to your actual practices. So I always had like those two things covered. And then I had like a job working outpatient for weight loss, as a dietitian. And I thought I was doing like a pretty good job as far as that goes. Because like, so most dietitians, like when I went to school, I mean, my bachelor's was in nutrition and fitness. So I did like an internship in strength and conditioning, but that's not
Mhm.
like the path that most dietitians take. Like most dietitians, you just do like 5 years, like accelerated program and like nutrition, and like that's it. My path was different. Plus, I was an athlete, so I was always into like the exercise part. But if like you went to like outpatient weight loss, with most dietitians are gonna be like, oh, like you should be active and you should try to sleep well, and like that's literally probably all they would say on the subject. But I thought I was doing like a pretty good job because I was like an athlete, like your coaches always stress like, oh, like you should be sleeping well. Sleep is super important for your recovery. And then like Matthew Walker was on Joe Rogan, I don't know, like sometime when I was like in college, and he talked a lot about sleep. So sleep was always like a thing because a lot of people who are always like tired and they're like, oh, I'm overtraining. We can touch on this later, but it's typically like not that they're overtraining, they're just under recovering, and it's probably like poor like light hygiene or just like poor recovery and stuff like that. So when I was doing like my job, I was focused on like nutrition for sure. Like, I mean, I'm not like I wrote a book on weight loss, and I definitely don't really advocate for calorie counting overall. I don't think it's sustainable. I think there may be a time and place for some people, at least to raise awareness, but overall, I'm definitely not advocate. But I was talking about like the nutrition, like clean eating, stuff like that. I was talking about exercise. I'm still a big fan of exercise, and I think especially for steps and stuff like that, a lot of the data is really good. And I think the reason why is like if you're getting like 10,000 steps a day, you're mostly getting it outside, and we can circle back to that too. But like a lot of people typically exercise outside, which is probably more of the benefit than the exercise itself is. And then I was talking about sleep because I knew that the sleep thing was really important too. Um, just because like I knew as an athlete you had to recover. And then like after like Matthew Walker and like reading his book and stuff like that, like the research is very clear. Like people who aren't sleeping as well, they typically eat more calories the next day. They're more insulin resistant.
Mhm.
Basically like anything you can think of, like poor sleep, you're gonna have issues. So I was talking about all this stuff. So I thought I was doing like a great job as a dietitian. But then like kind of what happens to everyone who loses weight, everyone basically gains it back. Like the research shows within 5 years, it's 95%. And within three, or actually within 1 year, it's like 75%. Like you gain it back or you gain even more than you started with originally. So I was kind of seeing the same thing at like this job. And kind of like, I was like trying to kind of figure out why. I was just like curious, because I actually tried to do like a pretty good job. And I also knew at the time about like plastics, just like environmental, toxins, like fragrances, all that sort of thing. And that plays a role too. But that wasn't necessarily something I could talk about either. And like most people who saw me, they were basically there because their doctor's like, hey, you should probably lose some weight because
What do you
it'll
mean
probably,
you couldn't talk about it? Like it
yeah,
wasn't
like
like
I think
in your job, it wasn't really what they wanted you to chat about?
it's not like, I mean, I could technically talk about like anything, but it's more like my patients like weren't ready for it, and I think a lot of them weren't ready to like change their life in that capacity. Like they didn't like if I was telling someone like, oh, you gotta get like a wooden cutting board and you gotta like buy like better clothing and change your sheets and stuff like that, like it just like wasn't that type of clientele, I guess. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people who reach out to me on Instagram, like they have like an issue and they're trying to solve it, and they're gonna go pretty far to resolve whatever the problem is. They're very motivated. But I think a lot of the people I was seeing where they're like they just they just wanted like they want to talk about food basically. And I think like that's part of it. Like I think most people still want to talk about food and nutrition, and maybe you can talk about sleep or exercise, but a lot of people aren't willing to go like the light or the darkness and stuff like that. But anyways, around that time too, one of my friends, Pat, he sent me like a podcast with Jack Cruz, and I listened to it, and I didn't know what Jack was talking about like at all. But then he sent me like a podcast with Alexis, and that made way more sense. So I kind of not for it's like even talking about like seeing the sunrise. It's like back then it's like I think now maybe it's like more common because of Huberman, like he says it like on every podcast. But I think even back then, like 3, 4 years ago, it wasn't like something like anyone really talked about. So I think like if I was like telling my clients like, oh, you should see the sunrise, like they would think I'm like crazy or something like that. Even though we know how important that is, like the research shows like people who have brighter days, they have like a lower BMI.
Right. But
And
most people don't know that
yeah,
information. And that's the truth. Like even
yeah,
when I bring it up now to clients, it's like I get the same thing, especially if it's a weight loss issue. They definitely want to zone in on the food. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
your sleep and your movement and your
yeah,
light are actually more important than your
yeah,
food.
exactly.
And that is a hard concept for people to get around because of the narrative we've been sold. Like you're a dietitian,
Yeah,
right? And your job is here. They've been coming to you. They're like, I want to talk about the food,
yeah,
right? Because
exactly. Yeah,
that's and
yeah,
not that it doesn't play a role, but it's certainly like it's the last on my list, really, when it
exactly.
comes to
Yeah.
health.
Yeah. Same here for me. Like the way I like to think about it, or like the way I explain it to like clients now is so GLP-1s, what's cool about them is they've showed us that appetite is everything. Like because you
Mhm.
go to your doctor who knows nothing about nutrition and he's probably like overweight himself. He's like, all right, like you gotta lose some weight. I'm gonna give you like Ozempic or Wegovy or like any GLP-1, whatever. There's like a lot of them now. You
Yeah.
give it to the person like and they're like, oh, like take this amount like once a week, which is typically how it works, and all these people lose weight and they didn't change anything. Like the only thing that changed is like it does a really good job at suppressing appetite. So we know that the appetite regulation is probably the biggest part of weight loss. It's not so much how much you're burning. And there's some really interesting like research looking at hunter and gatherers too, and they basically
Mm.
burn the same amount of calories as like someone living like the suburbs in America. So like your energy expenditure, your body adapts. So it's really like not that different when you like
Mm.
equate like age and weight and muscle. Like it's basically the same anywhere in the world. And if you
Mm.
can temporarily increase it, or like some people like burn a ton of calories because they're running, so your body like can't adapt a whole lot to that. But overall, like it's really hard to adjust the energy expenditure. Like obviously, if you have mitochondrial dysfunction or like you have thyroid issues because of that, like that's kind of like skewed or incorrect. You're just not burning as much as your body wants to be. But
Slow
that,
down on that with the
yeah,
thyroid and the mitochondria
yeah,
issues because I think a lot of people have both of those issues. So tell me,
sure,
like, talk a little bit about that because then the energy expenditure, like you were just saying, the metabolism is so slow, right? Everything's
yeah,
slowed down, right? Think of thyroid, think of cold hands, think of, constipation, think of fatigue, right?
yeah,
Nothing's really, the metabolism is so slowed and shut down, and that has to absolutely do with the mitochondrial health, taking it a step
yeah,
further back,
yeah,
right? Yeah, that's the
exactly,
issue,
yeah,
really. That's a deeper
yeah,
issue. But talk about that, like how the energy just doesn't
sure.
work as well.
Yeah, so like my theory that I wrote in my weight loss book is
Mm,
I think like the reason why like people have I mean there's a lot of reasons and like environmental toxins like fluoride in the water for example would actually be like a major contributor. But I think like the reason why your body would so like we have like T3 and T4 which basically like increase your metabolism and then you have reverse T3 which like basically puts the brake on. The reverse T3 does the opposite of T3 so like slows your metabolism down. So like
mm,
my like theory or hypothesis in the book is that the reason our bodies increase reverse T3 is because your mitochondria are dysfunctional. So your body is trying to protect itself. So
Isn't that usually like a stress response? So the body's trying to protect itself through a stress response, basically. Is that what you mean?
yeah, well, where I'm going with it is like your mitochondria when they're using like food for energy and like they're running the whole electron transport chain, you create reactive oxygen species, free radicals.
Mm-hmm.
And in the right amount, like exercise would be a really good example. Like you're increasing your free radicals, but there is a really good use case why because we use them for signaling and stuff like that, and your body's able to adapt. And so, like in the right context, in the right amount, free radicals are a good thing. Like you wouldn't exist without any at all. You need them. But the thing is, if you
Absolutely.
have mitochondrial dysfunction, you're making one of the issues. I mean, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation where like free radicals create mitochondrial dysfunction, but your dysfunctional mitochondria also create more free radicals. So where where I
Yes.
was going with it is like your body increases reverse T3 to send less energy through your mitochondria to create fewer free radicals. So
Makes sense.
that slows your metabolism to protect your mitochondria.
Mm,
So I mean, there's obviously like, so that'd be like the root cause. Like a lot of people have thyroid issues, and it might be the fluoride in the water. It might be
mm,
chloride. There might be like a lot of environmental toxins. Non-native EMFs have an effect on thyroid, and like there's a lot that can just impact your thyroid. But chances are the reason why it's probably having issues is like the mitochondrial dysfunction. So
right. And
if
all the things that then thus impact mitochondria dysfunction,
exactly,
right, is where you need to focus on rather than, all these
exactly,
other things, right?
yeah, exactly. And then like the going back to like the whole like appetite GLP-1 thing. So like
Mm,
a lot of people they lower their appetite, they don't change their lifestyle whatsoever, and they still lose weight as long as they're on the drug. Eventually like they get off and they gain it all back. So unless they actually made the lifestyle change, like it was kind of a waste of time and money and you use a drug which might not be the best thing for you. But so we know that appetite is important. And like what you were saying before is like food is the last thing. I totally agree. Because when you think about it, like food, like what determines like how much food you're eating? A lot of people would say like your hormones, like leptin, ghrelin, GLP. But if you think about it, like one level below that, like what determines your hormones is going to be like your biophysical environment, like light, water, magnetism, time, temperature, stuff like that. So that's going to be the layer underneath because, like brief examples, like every single hormone runs on a 24-hour clock. And if that clock isn't working correctly and your hormones are getting released at the wrong time and they're peaking at the wrong time, you're just you're gonna have so many issues and you're just gonna probably overconsume food and it's gonna be really hard to lose weight and you're probably just gonna end up gaining weight.
right. Because light is one of the major contributors of controlling leptin just in general and
Exactly.
hormones
Yep.
in general, right?
Yep.
Cortisol, melatonin, leptin, all these things,
Yep.
light has a huge role. Your environment has a
Exactly.
role. exposure to non-native EMFs, all of these things are huge with that. How much energy you're expending versus how much energy you're gaining from your environment, right? Like if you think about it like that, like kind of like that way, like how much energy am I losing from my environment versus how much energy am I gaining from my environment? That is going to be huge on how well that's all working. And sleep, like we said before, right? Like how important is that? Like to have good quality sleep, that's going to make a huge difference on whether your melatonin was working, leptin was working, how your hunger signals are going to be for the next day, how your insulin signaling is going to be for the next day. So all of it is connected, right? Not only to everything that was going on, all the inputs that we're receiving from our environment. So I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, so many fun things you touched on. I love that you're a wrestler. Both of my
Yeah.
my kids wrestle. I have boys, and they like to
Uh-huh.
wrestle. So I know about the weight issue and the cutting
Yeah.
issue. And my husband wrestled in
Uh-huh.
high school, and they still watch wrestling on TV. So I watch
Uh-huh.
wrestling on TV
Yeah.
sometimes, and it's like I know a little bit about it, and I go to the matches. So I know the ins and outs of that kind of lifestyle. And you said
Yeah.
you wrestled in college too, did you say as
Yeah.
well?
That,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you really, really were into it, and you really had to keep a certain weight, which can be,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stress that places on the body. I think about that all the time. Like my son, he's like, "Oh, I can't eat this," or my nephew also wrestles, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, I gotta make the weight on the scale tomorrow." And it's like, so there's a lot of like ickiness around that for me as well when
Yeah.
I hear about it, but I hear a lot of the good things about it too, because I'm like, we don't want to be stressing the body all the time because I think it was you. I heard you say in a podcast about like carnivore keto diets and long term how that really places a lot of stress on the body.
Yeah.
And I agree. Um, when I first got sick, I don't know my story too much, but when I first got sick, it was a lot of food fear and a lot of food restriction.
Mhm.
I already was doing the calorie deficit thing to lose. I lost 60 pounds in 1 year and I kept it off.
Uh-huh.
But I kept it off by keeping myself in a calorie deficit,
Uh-huh.
right? Because this is
Yeah.
before I knew anything else, right? So I was like, I
Sure.
just keep myself in a calorie deficit. And anytime I go above that calorie deficit, I would gain weight. So I just have to keep going lower and lower. And then I got chronically ill and it was food fear. Don't eat oxalates, don't eat histamines, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat nuts, don't eat eggs. Like, and I was like, then I wound up going carnivore and lost my period for 6 months. So this is all just so relevant. And that was looking at the food story, but I wasn't looking at anything else in my lifestyle at that point, right? And then when I started doing light and then I started eating a bit more carbs, things started to get better. But I do think like I put my leptin in the tank by being low carb. My leptin was a 2. Like so you can do that. And that is it's a lesson, I think, especially in women who are more sensitive. Like we need to learn that lesson. Like I think calorie restriction, carbohydrate restriction, long-term ketosis, long-term any of that, your carnivore, it has a negative impact. And I have a feeling that you agree on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there are some people who are maybe just like built different, for lack of a way of phrasing it, where they can just like Sean Baker is like a really good one where he's been carnivore for like 7 or 8 years. I mean, the guy has like world records and whatever. Like if you like he's just like a whole like he's like an exception basically, not the
Yeah,
rule.
but not
But
the norm.
yeah, exactly, not the norm. Yeah, by no means. But yeah, for most people, especially like people who work with me, like I find that adding, especially like local and seasonal, like people when they add back in those carbs, they just do so much better. And if people are more like me in terms of like I've gone like lower carb and it just like doesn't work for me. I like wake up like we talked about sleep a couple of times and like the reason why light and darkness are probably so important is because it also like really improves your sleep or it really has a negative impact on your sleep depending on what you're doing. And for me, I know like when I go low carb, I start waking up like 3, 4, 5 times a night. Like
Your
after like
cortisol and adrenaline are
yeah,
your body's
exactly.
being
Yeah,
stressed. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the case for most people. So I know like people have like behavioral issues around food too, where like sometimes like if they eat carbs, they can't necessarily stop eating them. But I think that's kind of like almost like for like a more callous way of phrasing it is like people have to get over that because not eating those carbs, chances are it's probably causing you more health issues than it's benefiting you. And I know like if especially you have like performance goals, and if you're just active overall, like those carbs, they're probably actually really good for you. And I mean, low hanging fruit in like the quantum space, like I don't like people don't really talk about like exercise, but if like you should be lifting weights a couple of days a week. Like we know that that's like one of the healthiest things you can do. You should be doing cardio. Like as much like I hate running probably more than like anyone else, but I still try to do it a couple of days a week just because cardio, like aerobic exercise, like one of the best things you can do for your mitochondria and your overall health. So that's kind of just low hanging fruit, and it's really hard to go on a run if you're low carb. Like you got some like fruit, local seasonal like carbs in you, like that run is gonna go so much better. So if you think about like the big picture, and also if you think about like food being like one of the least important things, anyways, like if you're eating carbs or not, it has way less of an impact on you than like you're getting blue light at night or something along those lines. So I think just people are totally focusing on the wrong thing for sure.
Oh, I love that. I actually am one of those weirdos who loves running. I was addicted to running. Like I loved it. It was like my favorite thing to do. But I also think that contributed because I was eating low
Yeah,
calorie and running all the
yeah,
time. And then I got chronically ill, right? So
yeah.
like this is a contributor to health. Everything in life is a balance, right? Like you just
Agreed.
said,
Yeah,
yeah, lift weight a couple times a week, maybe a cardio session in a little bit, eat balance, eat local,
yeah,
eat seasonal, don't restrict. Like don't go to like one of these like, don't go to like the extremes. I feel like when we go
mhm,
to the extremes in some ways,
yeah.
that's where we lose balance because extremes are not
I
balanced.
agree. Yeah,
So like that's where I see it more along lines. And if you're cutting carbs and then you're not sleeping well, the sleep is more important. Remember that.
yeah,
So when you cut carbs and the sleep doesn't do well, scratch it. It's not right for you because the sleep is more important that you get that right? Whatever makes you sleep well and poop well, to me, those like then you're on the right track, right?
yeah,
Like that's what
exactly.
you need to do because then those are like markers that you know that health is like energy, sleep, and going to the bathroom every day. Like that's what you need to have
Exactly.
happen because if you're not doing those things, So anyway, this has all been so fun so far. So
Yeah,
tell me quantum nutrition, like how, because I know it's not just about food, right?
yeah. It's not
Obviously.
really about food at all.
And not really about food at all. So how do we achieve quantum nutrition? Like give us a little bit of like what do we do in our practical life? I mean, I know
Yeah,
I hear you saying light. I think the
sure.
people who
Yeah,
don't know, I hear you saying movement. I hear you saying darkness. I hear like what do we do? How do we achieve quantum nutrition?
yeah. So there is actually I've never heard anyone reference. There's like a paper from like 2025, and I think it's called Quantum Nutrition. Like it's on PubMed. Like it's like an
Mm,
actual paper. And I kind of, I mean, I guess I was into the stuff way before that paper was even written. But basically, I think the way the authors in the paper like phrased it is super right. Like, what if there's more to nourishment than food? Because food is just one type of nourishment, but there's so much else, like EMFs, like the Earth's natural magnetic field. Like that's providing a nourishment, if you will. I mean, it's not like exactly the same.
mhm,
If you think like you get electrons from grounding, I mean that's a type of nourishment. Your light environment, all that stuff, they're providing different alternatives. And if you think about it, like there is a potential that like where people are overeating to make up for the lack of nourishment in the other areas of their life. I mean, a really good example would be like stress eating. Like a lot of people are stress eating, but
mhm,
I would argue like I mean, everything's a stressor when you think about it. Like exercise is stress, but I'd argue like, oh, like if you're not getting enough sunlight or red light from the sun and you're just under blue light all day, like that's a stressor. If you're around non-native EMS all day, that's a stressor. So basically, what I went through in the book is light, water, magnetism, time, temperature, exercise, microbiome, and food.
mm,
I might be
mm,
missing one, but those are like the big ideas. So I kind of try to outline it, and especially like in the weight loss book, when like most people would see me, they're trying to lose weight. Like I feel like that's the biggest concern everyone has, and kind of rightfully so, because our whole environment makes it really hard to be at a healthy weight. Like it's really hard. Basically, everything is working against you from like the physical, like oh, there's fast food everywhere, to like blue light making your sleep worse, which makes you want to eat more. So you're getting like bombarded from like every side basically. So I approached it with what I thought was the most important to least important. So food, like we agree on that totally. That was the last chapter in both my books because I really do think that's the least important because what you're eating is going to be a direct reflection of everything else that comes first. And even like right now, like even when I was doing that job and on social media, a lot of people were just like, yeah, like I just tell people to exercise more and eventually they're just going to start eating better because they're going to have performance goals or like they're going to start eating protein because they want to build muscle or they're going to start eating carbs because they're doing cardio, like whatever like exercise you like, if you get into that, like that's going to affect your food. But like there's a lot more stuff that affects your food than just exercise. So light would be the first big one. So and darkness, I guess, because they go together.
definitely.
So I guess the place we can start with light is there's a lot of research basically showing that the brighter your day is, so like literally the more daylight you're getting, the lower BMI you're gonna be. Just like your health outcomes overall are just way higher. And there's like two big studies. I think one is Sweden and the other one might be like a UK study that basically showed that people who just spend more time outside, um, every like all of their risks go down. Like they simply just live longer. The only thing is like melanoma risk slightly goes up, but then you survive it. Like your chances of survival also
Right, but it's
increase.
the type of
Yeah, exactly.
melanoma
Yeah,
also is melanoma that to become carcinogenic is usually like so I think it's the type if I remember correctly
yeah,
in the research that and I believe there was a study that even said that even if you had melanoma and you went outside,
yeah,
right, the more the people who that was like followed women and the women who went
yeah,
outside actually lived longer than the women who
yeah,
didn't go
exactly.
outside
Yeah,
because obviously because sunlight is has a impact on all cause mortality, right?
correct.
Like,
Yeah,
and even if you just think of
yeah,
it,
everything. Yeah,
sunlight does so much more than vitamin D, right? But if you
sure.
just
Yeah,
think of it
exactly.
from that, and we know vitamin
Yeah,
D supports the immune system, right? So
yeah,
you have more vitamin D, and we know from a pill is not the same, right? You have more
yeah,
vitamin
exactly.
D versus you don't because you're inside versus you're outside. Like just that alone, that one factor, most people can understand that. Then, sunlight is the winner here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was just a guy on Joe Rogan. I don't know if you listened to it, maybe like 2 days ago. Rowan something. He wrote a book on sunlight. Actually, I didn't know about him until the podcast that he did on Rogan. He kind of came
Mm,
out of nowhere. And I think he missed a lot of stuff in terms of like he didn't talk about like easy water, structured water, or anything like
yeah.
that. He really took just like the mainstream stance, but like the mainstream stance in terms of sunlight is good. So it was basically all about vitamin D,
Mhm.
and not so much
Right.
the other stuff. But I think it's like a good start. But he did touch on that. Like there's one big study. Like the way to think about vitamin D is it's like a tally of how much you're spending, how much time you're spending outside. Like if
Right.
you artificially increase your vitamin D with a supplement, it doesn't actually improve your health in any way. Like people who have higher vitamin D are healthier because they're outside. So people kind of get that backwards. Like you can't supplement your way to health,
Here's
especially
a
with
really
vitamin
great
D.
example of that. When I was really sick, when I became
Yeah,
really chronically ill, I had a vitamin D 87. You know why? Not because I was outside in the sun. I was pale as a ghost. I did
yeah.
not look tan like this. It was because I was supplementing with 10,000 IUGs a day.
Yeah. It just gives you like false markers, like it increases it in
Yeah.
your blood. But yeah, I think there's also a disconnect between, I guess, like side note, there's a disconnect between like health and lab values. For me,
Yeah.
like, I don't really, I never make clients like get labs or anything like that. Because like
Mhm.
if you feel great and your labs don't look good, I mean, if you actually feel good, like I don't really care what your labs are. And I think your labs can be total, like, what's the most common is people's labs are good and they still feel horrible. Like I experience that all the time. Like, and you might even like go further, like do like a fasting insulin, like you might like hormone levels, like you might like it might all be normal and you might still feel like not great. So I
Mhm.
think for the most part, labs are a waste of money. Like if your insurance pays for it, like go ahead and like get some labs. Like why not? But I think for the most part, like everyone I work with, they're like, oh, like I wake up 3 or 4 times a night, like I have low energy, I'm crashing in the afternoon. They send me their labs, and their labs are like mostly fine. Like maybe they have like one or two like random numbers that are off, but for the most
Mhm.
part, it's fine. Their vitamin D might be good, but they're on a supplement, so you don't even know how much time they're spending outside. But
Mhm.
there's also like another study in terms of sunlight where they had people who were underslept. They didn't. I think I don't remember. This thing was like 6.5 hours of sleep. It wasn't like a lot of sleep. And they compare that to when they got a full amount of sleep, and then they compared it with when they got sunlight in the morning. And
Mhm.
basically, when you don't sleep enough, your leptin goes down and your ghrelin goes up, meaning like you're just more hungry the next day. When they underslept and they got sunlight in the morning, they actually like reversed that. Their leptin and ghrelin were basically normal. Now I think like long term, like if you're undersleeping chronically, sunlight isn't gonna help you out like as much as you think. But for like that like one night they did the study, like the sunrise was able to counteract all the harmful effects, or I guess most of the harmful effects that they tested. Um,
Mhm.
Most importantly, the leptin and ghrelin, and also like we know like light makes you way more like insulin sensitive, and you're able to like use glucose much better.
Yeah.
So just knowing how important light is for like weight and overall metabolism, it definitely has to be the number one thing for sure. And then on the flip side of that would be darkness. I kind of darkness and sleep for me go together, but I specifically say darkness because people could literally sleep with like a light on and like technically you're sleeping, but you're just not getting most of the benefits. Like you need pure darkness to get melatonin. And melatonin is our main antioxidant. And also you need the pure darkness for the lymphatic system in your brain to like clear out like all the junk you build up over the day. So you might be sleeping, but if you have it, like you'll be surprised about the amount of people who sleep with the TV on. It's like a lot of people.
I'm not surprised because I asked this question. Or a nightlight
Yeah,
or
or
something
yeah,
else. Like they need to have some. And I also, like, so I'm a homeopath, so I understand
uh-huh,
like there's fears, there's phobias, there's things,
yeah,
there's other, like maybe there's another deeper reason why they're scared of
uh-huh,
the dark, right? So
yeah,
it could be a trauma piece, right? There's things like
uh-huh,
this that need to be worked on. So deeper level things that need to be supported. But yeah, people, I mean, before I knew all this information, Ethan, I did it
uh-huh,
all wrong because I didn't know,
yeah,
because we just are not aware. Like nobody tells
yeah,
us, like, we're just so disconnected from nature and its rhythms that we don't even
yeah,
think about these things. So we had a TV in our bedroom. I used to fall asleep with the TV all the time and we just leave it on and it would be on all night. And I have people who say, I can't sleep because I need the noise
yeah. I've
or
heard that. Yeah,
like something like that. I need like a distraction, right? Or something like that. Or, there's just so many like reasons why that people do these things. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. That shocked me. Like when I was doing that outpatient job, like I swear it was like every other person had their TV on, and I just like blew my mind. And like the amount of people who said the same thing, like, "Oh, I need the noise," or "I need the light." I've heard that quite a bit. That was like super crazy to me. Like even like before I even knew about quantum stuff, I was like, "That's so crazy." But just because I guess like my parents, like even though they were like they didn't know about like quantum, like my dad was always like, "Oh, cell towers are bad. Like you can't have a TV in your bedroom." So like
It seems
it's
like you grew up
yeah,
with a lot of good
yeah,
information that
exactly.
people, yeah,
Yeah,
that not
yeah. I
everybody
mean,
else grows up
yeah,
with.
yeah. My dad was like a kind of like a crazy guy in some ways, but he was on point as far as that goes. But not, I never like did anything like about it. Like I knew grounding was good, and he was always working on a tan, like working on a tan in the summer. He's like, it's good for you. But he was always like the craziest guy I knew. So like I didn't like you kind of. I think when your parents tell you something, you don't like take it to heart versus like you hear from like outside source and outside
I
information.
really relate to this even because I'm the crazy parent and my kids don't want to listen to me and I'm going to have them listen to this episode. I'm like, he's a wrestler. Maybe they'll listen.
Yeah. You should send him to Kyle Dake. There's a really good Kyle Dake is like two-time Olympic bronze medalist. He was four-time NCAA champ from
What's his last
Cornell.
name? Kyle what?
Dake, Dake. And there's a video on YouTube. They're gonna have to search for it. It's from like 7 or 8 years ago, but he knew about Jack Cruz like way back then. And
Cool.
there's like this video from like Flow Wrestling, and they're like following him around for a day, and they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm working on my tan." And they're like, "What's this wire hanging out from your window?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my grounding rod that I use to sleep at night." And it's like an old video from like 7 or 8 years ago because he like got into the whole functional patterns thing. But anyways, he was always like he knew about Jack Cruz like way before most people did. Like this
Cool.
video probably like 2017, 2018. It's like a way older video, but he was trying to like optimize performance and recovery. So he caught on to this like super early. I think he was wearing like grounding shoes when he was going hiking. Like he was like way ahead. But I think if you're trying to like, I mean, he was like two-time Olympic medalist and like he's won a bunch of like world titles. Like I think if you're really trying to optimize, this is actually like one of the best ways because again, like when I mentioned at the beginning, like overtraining versus under recovery, like there's a major difference. Like I think if people were actually like sleeping in the dark to go back to the whole darkness thing, and if you're like not getting you if you're not getting blue light, like I don't know, like in at least like an hour before bed, and like you have like red incandescents, or at the very minimum you have like red blue light blocking glasses, like you're just gonna simply be able to recover way better, and you're gonna be able to train harder and therefore perform at a higher level. So I think, and like he figured that out like really early on, and I think like if you think about most athletes, they're just like, oh, I'm still gonna like grind harder and train harder, and then like they don't do maybe they eat a little bit better. They don't really like cover like any of their other bases, so they're just leaving like stuff on the table. And seeing the sunrise or sleeping in a pitch black room is kind of low hanging fruit. Like anyone can do that. Like there's a sunrise everywhere in the whole planet, and there's blackout curtains everywhere. Like you can easily have a pitch black bedroom if you want, and like it really is low hanging fruit. Anyone can turn off their router at night. Like, I mean, I get that if you're in an apartment or something like that, like even if you turn off yours, there's still like other ones around you. Like, I get it's not ideal, but like there's a lot of like low hanging fruit that like anyone
It
can do.
still makes a difference though,
Yeah.
because there's the inverse square law. So
Yeah.
even if you do that, like I don't, we don't even have Wi-Fi in the house.
Oh,
This
good for you.
yeah, we put
Yeah.
Ethernet. But I live in the suburbs, so neighbors are right
Yeah.
there, and they have
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, right? Like, so I'm not away from it, but it does make an impact just removing it from your personal environment because it is distance is your friend with when it
A
comes to
hundred, a
getting into
hundred percent.
VMS, right? So that's like a simple way. And it made me think of as you were talking, I was thinking
Uh-huh.
about, most people, the thing is, most people do think we get all of our energy from food, right? That's what
Mhm.
we think.
Yeah.
But if we understand that only a small portion of our energy should come from food and the rest of the energy should come from the environment, when you have that paradigm shift, when you start to understand that and then you start implementing that, you said if you're going to recover better if you have better energy capacity, if you have better
Yeah.
functioning mitochondria, right? You're obviously going to recover better. Like it's just obvious. So it's like if we can just wrap our brain around, oh, I can also gather energy from earthing. I can also gather energy from light. I can also gather energy from drinking structured water, right? These will all help everything function better and remove the things or lessen the things that steal the energy, that zap the energy, right? If we could think of that, then we think about that's only one third, and the other two thirds, how much less food becomes important,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, anything else we missed? Quantum nutrition. So we've got light, we've got movement, we've got
Darkness. So yeah,
darkness.
basically just sleep in the dark. Main thing as far as darkness.
Yeah.
The brighter your days, the better you're gonna sleep too. There is like one study that they showed like I don't remember all the details, but basically like people who spend a bunch of time outside, even when they have blue light exposure right before bed, they actually made more melatonin anyways. So it's kind
Mm.
of like a good like safety measure. I mean,
That's a
obviously,
cool study. I didn't hear that one. So you're saying even
yeah,
if you had bright days all day long,
yeah,
you have bright days all day long, you're outside most of the day, right? But you
yeah.
use some blue light at night, it had less of
Uh-huh.
an impact because you,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Because I think I can't remember. I want to say like blue light at night, like typically it'll like suppress melatonin like 80 or 90%,
Yeah.
something like that. And I think the study, I mean, it was a long time ago I read it. It was like 50 or 60% suppressed. So it was like it was decent, but I mean like if you're suppressing 50 or 60% of your melatonin, that's still like a lot. I mean, it gave you like a little bit of a buffer from like almost all of this being suppressed to like 50 or 60%. But really,
Yeah.
if you just use the red incandescent before bed, it'll be like basically zero.
Zero. Yeah.
So it's still like not ideal, but there is like some buffering going on there.
Yeah.
Let's see, time, circadian rhythm. I mean, it basically also like bounces off of like the light and darkness thing because that basically sets your circadian rhythm. Sunrise every day, it resets your clock. Like the light goes in through your eye, hits your suprachiasmatic nucleus. Your body knows what time it is, so you got to see the sunrise to reset that clock. Because even though our days are 24 hours, if you were like they did some experiments like in the 60s or 70s, like if you put someone in a cave underground, it's not actually 24 hours. It's like between like 23 and 25 hours depending on the person, which is
Hmm.
still like pretty close. Like that's not far off. But since we actually live on a 24-hour schedule every day, like you have to be most people have to be at work at 9 a.m., something along those lines. You do want to reset that clock every day. Same thing with darkness before bed, kind of does the same thing. There's also other things that set your circadian rhythm. Food is a big one. Like your liver clock, even without sunrise. If I never recommend eating before sunrise, like that's a big no-go for me, or really eating anytime the sun's not up. But for like some people who eat it, like let's say you wake up at 5 a.m. and you have to be at work at 7 before sunrise, and it's the winter, and you eat breakfast at 6 a.m. Like that food actually does set your liver circadian clock. So there is like other things. Grounding does the same thing. That'll set your circadian clock as well. Movement, exercise does as well. I think social interaction actually sets your circadian clock too.
Even
Uh,
exercise, even
yeah,
if you
even
don't.
yeah, exercise,
Yeah.
movement. What was that? Oh, cold. Because like you
Okay.
have to like it's kind of interesting. Like it kind of ties back into the sleep thing. I guess everything kind of ties to sleep. But like when you go to bed, your body cools down, and in the morning it heats up. So like the whole temperature thing also like affects your circadian rhythm. But the reason why that's important, like I mentioned earlier, is everything in your body runs on a 24-hour clock. So like one of the questions I always ask, for example, to make it like more practical, is like, are you waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom? Because if you're waking up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I get there's exceptions. Like some people like they work out at night and they drink a lot of water. So if you wake up one time, like not ideal, but it does happen. But for the most part, like no one should be waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. So if someone's
And
telling
how
me,
many people,
yeah,
how many of my clients wake up in the middle of the night to go to
yeah,
the bathroom? And they're older and
yeah,
they're doing it one time. I'm like, all right, and if they can fall back asleep
yeah,
very reasonably, then I'm like, okay,
yeah.
right. But a lot of times it's frequent,
Yeah, a lot
especially
of
as
times like
people
three or
age.
four times a night. So that tells me it's a circadian rhythm issue. EMFs actually, like for me, I used to wake up two or three times in the middle of the night actually. And what I found was that when I moved like my bed away from the wall, that like fixed my
Hmm.
problem. Because again, EMFs like were
Did you put it in like the middle of the room when you stay away from the wall?
I just moved it like a foot away because like inverse square law. So I have
Hmm.
like since then I've bought like the Safe and Sound like 3 like that does like the electric fields and the magnetic fields too. And like against the wall. It wasn't like crazy high, but it was like 2.5 for a magnetic field like
Yeah.
Gauss, which is still like a decent amount. But when I moved it like 12 inches, it was like zero. Like it doesn't take a whole lot because anytime wires are running through a wall, even if there's nothing plugged into the outlets, they still create magnetic fields. So there's no electric fields actually because if nothing's plugged in, there won't be an electric field. But magnetic fields, as long as there's a wire in that wall, is going to create that. And I believe we're actually more sensitive to magnetic fields than radio waves or electric fields. So that's like a
Yeah.
big one. So when I actually moved my bed away from the wall, that like totally solved my issue, which is like pretty cool.
That
That's
is
that.
awesome.
Yeah, that's like some like a, and again, like that's something like anyone can do. Like, and it's not only like a foot. I mean, it kind of like it looks kind of dumb, I guess, because like why isn't your bed against the wall? But it definitely serves like a big
Who's,
function.
I mean, really, like how many people, like, I mean, I don't know, like how many people are really seeing it? Like, who cares? Like,
That's true.
like I think like be the weirdo if it makes you feel
That's
better and
true.
it improves your sleep and you're not
That's
waking
true.
up to go to the bathroom. Like, what does
Yeah.
it matter? Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like every time like my kids look at me crazy and we're wearing my blue blockers, I'm like, well, I used to have chronic insomnia and I don't want to. So, like I will wear my blue blockers as long as I need to. Like sleep matters
I
to me
think
so
yeah.
much.
I think blue blockers are actually pretty in style. Like I still like work a full-time job and I wear like
Cool.
yellow ones all day when I'm inside and like no one's ever said anything. And I've seen like at my previous job, I've seen like a lot of clients actually wearing yellow ones. Like eye doctors
Nice.
prescribe them. I think eye doctors like actually start prescribing them more, especially for eye strain and stuff like that. They really do help and there's actually like
They
research to back
usually
it.
prescribe them though clear instead of yellow, which
Yeah,
is what
that's true. But some people actually get yellow ones now too
yeah.
from the eye doctor, or maybe they like do their own research. They
Yeah.
kind of buy their own. Um,
Good.
they're. I mean, you get prescription ones. Like my girlfriend has prescription ones, and
Mhm.
I think like insurance like covered like some of it, but and like it's not like anything crazy. But you can get like a prescription for it, and you can get like your eye doctor to say you need them. And they're pretty like open to writing that out, at least from
Mm.
what I've heard. So I think like a lot of this style is slowly coming, or a lot of this stuff is coming more to style, especially with like Huberman and like all the big names like always talking about it. It's like way less crazy. I mean, I think Huberman's like a top 5 podcast. So like how many people are listening to him and talking about like the glasses and their circadian rhythms and the sunrise and
Yep.
so on and so forth. Movement will probably be another one. We've touched on it a little bit. So important. Like the research shows, like people who like the average American does like 3,500 or 4,000 steps a day.
Mm.
When you double that and like someone does 8,000 steps, their all cause mortality goes down by like 50-ish%. And when someone does like 12,000, it goes down by like 65%. I would guess that I mean, people do walk on the treadmill. I used to see that all the time at the gym. But I would guess a lot of that research is more like, oh, like this person is walking outside or they're working a blue collar job where they're outside, something along those lines. So I would wager a lot of that benefit isn't necessarily from the walking. It's more from being outside and potentially being grounded, being in nature, like all the Japanese research on like forest bathing too. I
Okay.
know I haven't got very far in it, but Gerald Pollack's most recent book, Charged, he talked about like the reason why we might breathe is to get electrons from the air, which is
Yes, yes, I
really
heard about
yeah,
that. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. Like negative ions in the air and why people like who live in nature and spend a lot of time in nature, they have like better health outcomes as well. So that's like a pretty interesting thing, like kind of like the same idea of like you're grounding to get electrons, like same thing. You might be able to just get that from the air as well, which is like super cool.
Hmm.
Um, really interesting thing to think about because we always think about like, oh, we need oxygen at the end of the electron transport chain to make deuterium depleted water and to
Yes.
accept the fine electrons and stuff like that. But like maybe we just need the negative ions from the air itself. Like kind of like a pretty interesting thing to think about. But I would say like overall, I guess I'll talk about like the food thing real quick too. We talked about everything but food, but I would say as far as food goes, I just keep it really simple. And I've, at least in my experience, I think my clients are different than like other people. But most of the people who see me, ironically, since I'm a dietitian, they're already eating pretty well. I really don't have like many like diet issues because it's probably a user bias thing where people have already changed their diet and it hasn't fixed their problem. Like I'm sure some people have issues, they fix their diet and it solves the problem, so then they never have to like reach out to
I
me.
think that's more like a band-aid thing though.
Yeah,
Like it's a short-term thing, like it really won't sustain. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, perhaps, or like they did it and just nothing happened in the first place. Arthur
Yeah.
Furstenberg and like the Invisible Rainbow, he actually
Mhm.
talked about like all the cardiac issues and heart attacks. Like he's like, oh yeah, like if you went like low fat in the 70s or 80s when there was like relatively low EMF still, like that probably could have fixed your problem. But in like 2026, like you can eat whatever you want, you're still gonna have heart attacks because of the EMFs. So it kind of makes a lot of sense to me. But basically, if you're eating local or seasonal for most of your food, like you're gonna be fine. Only eat when the sun is up. Get
Yeah,
plenty.
go into
Yeah,
that because I always tell clients only eat when the sun is up. The only issue I have with that sometimes is when it's, extreme environments. Obviously
yeah,
then that's going to be a problem, right? Because maybe you live in a place where the sun is only up for a few hours a day,
yeah,
right? So that would be that only caveat to that. But in
yeah,
most places, yes, I think that's a really great practice, which makes the feeding window for me like much
yeah,
shorter in the winter than it
yeah,
is like we're
exactly.
going to
Yeah,
the summer solstice. Like this is the longest day of light coming up tomorrow. Like
yeah,
so here, like that feeding window is a lot longer. So maybe touch on that a little bit, like why to only eat when the sun is out, because it is a recommendation I make unless it's an extreme environment.
yeah. That's a good point. About the extreme environments, and I would say if it's an extreme environment, it goes back to the whole circadian thing too. Where if you're eating at the same times consistently, that's
Yes.
probably your best bet.
Yes.
Like I mean, I'm in Maryland. I'm not that far from you, relatively speaking. Like our sunrise and sunsets are probably like within 30 minutes of each other. So it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. Like in the winter, it's like a 7.5 hour eating window at some points in the year, which is fine. Like I don't think you need to like force intermittent fasting, but you're going to be intermittent fasting anyways in the winter, just because that's when the sun is up. But the reason why is sunlight, it sets your circadian rhythm and it just primes your body for everything for the rest of the day. So if your body is not ready for that food and it's still dark out and you're eating, that's like a major misalignment. And you have to think, I didn't even talk about it, but like energy flow or like how your body uses energy versus like the amount of energy you take in. Like two people could eat the same exact meal in the same exact place at the same exact time, and they might extract a different amount of energy based on gut microbiome, based on light environment. Like if I'm eating inside and you're eating outside, our like what our body does with that food is going to be totally different. So I think eating after the light is up is extremely important just to be able to utilize that food more efficiently because like you need like the cortisol rise in the morning after sunrise. You're most insulin sensitive right after sunrise in the morning. So you have all these things that are at their peak right in the morning. So like if you're gonna eat carbs, side note, you should be eating them in the morning too because that's when you're gonna be most insulin sensitive. So I think just waiting till the sun is up, it basically gives you like a lot of leeway. And again, like if someone's in an extreme environment, like in Alaska or something like that, you'll just have to like food is probably the second or food and like exercise slash movement are like the other two major zeitgeibers that set your clock. So I think that if you are able to keep it consistently, like it's dark all day in Alaska at some points in the year, but if you're like
Yeah.
8 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m. is when I'm gonna eat, like your body is able to kind of figure that out. Is it optimal? Like no, but your body can kind of like work with that as long as it's consistent. And I think like in the summer we can get away with a lot more because the sun is up longer. But I still think like you should consistently be eating around the same times, anyways. Um,
Yes.
it's it's more, yeah,
Consistent meal times, consistent move times. I always tell people it's like the body flows on rhythms, right? So
yeah,
if you keep like it's expecting food at this time, it's expecting you to be up, it's expecting bowel movements to
exactly,
happen, like all these things, like it should be a rhythm, like a daily rhythm, like keep things kind of stable, and that makes a
exactly.
huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say I talked about it on the podcast I did a couple months ago, but the reason like people lose sight of this, like in some ways the reason why you want to be healthy is so then you can get away with stuff. Like I was talking to like Andreas, like I think his podcast like Modern Fitness, something like that, Modern Wisdom. Like I'm not sure what his podcast is. But anyways, we were talking about
We
like
had Andreas on the
yeah,
podcast. He's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, like he goes to like the beach and he eats ice cream on the beach. But like when your light is good and you're grounded, like you can eat ice cream and it's like it's totally fine. So you can get away with stuff. Or like in the summer, if I'm gonna go to dinner or something with like some friends or my girlfriend or whatever, and it's like 7 p.m. but the sun is up, like it's not the worst thing ever. Like, is it ideal? Not necessarily, but you're much more likely to get away with it without any harmful effects. So like the reason all this matters and the reason why you want to be healthy in the first place is in some ways so you can like get away with stuff or like have the capacity to do the stuff you want to do, which maybe like that stuff itself may be suboptimal. So I
Yeah,
think like
totally
people kind
agree.
of like lose sight of that. But like if you're consistent most of the time and you have like a one-off thing every once in a while, like your body's able to adapt to. And honestly, like if your body can't adapt to that sort of thing, I'll probably say you're not healthy either because your body should be resilient. And like the whole point of being healthy is to be resilient. So if you're not able to adapt, like you have, if you have like one bad night of sleep, for example, and like you're just wrecked the next day and you got like 6 hours of sleep, like you're probably not super healthy because like you should be able to be resilient enough to have like one bad night of sleep every couple of months and be like fine. Like if you're traveling or like it's just gonna happen to everyone for whatever circumstances there are. So you should be able to like be resilient enough to handle that, which is why we do all this stuff in the first place. But if
Totally agree. Totally
yeah,
agree. The point is to build resilience, to build strength. So these stressors that come into our lives don't affect us as much and knock us down. And so you can go have ice cream with your friends or your family at night or whatever one night, and you don't feel wrecked the next day or you don't feel
exactly.
horrible. Like, because I mean, I feel like when I got into health, I was like restrict the rules, the rigidity, all the things, like everything was so rigid and the strictness and the rules. And maybe I needed that for some point in time, but
Uh-huh.
then as I healed, I was like, oh, I can actually, it doesn't really matter. Like I can, like, not that it doesn't matter. That's not the wrong
Yeah.
right words, but I can do this. And my body is
Yeah,
now resilient enough that it doesn't floor me. It doesn't ruin the next day or weeks or whatever, like it used to.
exactly.
And that's the point, is to build that resilience so you're stronger and you bounce back faster and you come back to homeostasis faster so you can enjoy life as well, because nobody wants to, like, I think that's one of my biggest complaints with clients a
Uh-huh.
lot of times is they don't want to be stuck in the rigidity and the rules and the this and
Yeah.
that. And some clients do sometimes are in
Yeah.
that way too much and they need a little bit of the opposite. Oh, let's
Sure.
let's do something fun here and there, you know. So I do see both sides of the coin in my practice, but because you need to have joy and fun and life is meant to be
Exactly.
enjoyed,
Yeah.
right? Like come on, like if you're not having joy, if you're like just trying to heal yourself and you're living in a health routines all the time and like you're not living life, you're not enjoying it, that's not going to be healthy either. Right. So there's this balance between all of these things, but yeah, definitely I really concur with that because that's the whole point, is to build the resilience so you can live your life and do have fun and do what you want to do. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah, definitely. I think like all these like like tying it all together, like as far as like quantum stuff goes, like
Hmm.
like sunlight, like you can just spend as much time as you can outside and you can get away with stuff. Like for me, like I think everyone has like a weakness. Like for me, sweets. I have like a major sweet tooth. But I know if I'm like eating it outside after I did some kind of exercise, like my blood glucose spike is probably gonna be super minimal, just because we talked about like sunlight. It really like levels out like your blood sugar response, your circadian rhythm is aligned. So I think like the benefit of living this lifestyle is you are more resilient and you can do more stuff you want to do for like again like you can get away with more stuff if that's how you want to think about it. But I think a lot of people like you said, like they go like too extreme. I mean, I think like most of us were there at some point, and I think there is benefits of going extreme in some ways, but like you can't stay extreme forever. Like you're gonna burn out at some point and you're gonna fall off the wagon at some point, and that's a stressor in itself, which is also bad. Like being stressed is, I mean, if you think about like everything's a stressor, EMS, blue light, like everything's a stressor. So that's just like one more stressor you got to worry about. But there is also benefits, and like if you went extreme, there's some habits you're gonna just keep forever, like the sunrise, maybe darkness at night.
Hmm.
I briefly, I think right before we talked about like microplastics, stuff like that. Like maybe you already changed out like your environment at home, like little things like that, like those are just changes you're probably gonna stick with forever because like you can just eat breakfast outside for most people. Like it's not like a crazy change, but now you're getting sunrise and now you're eating a meal outside, which is gonna have a totally different impact. So I think like a lot
And
of
take your shoes and socks off while you're
yeah,
at it too.
exactly. Or if you're going, Yeah, exactly. Or if you go into a restaurant, just sit outside. Like most restaurants, at least nice ones, have outdoor seating these days. A
Yeah.
lot of people like that. So I think like if you do most things pretty well, you can get away with stuff. And like you're never gonna be perfect as far as EMS go or as far as lighting goes. So the reason why like I always talk about like I'm not an expert in like any of this stuff, but I know a little bit from like every category because you're not going to be perfect in every category. But like if you can minimize your fluoride exposure and you can minimize blue light and you can get some red light, like everything has like a cumulative effect. So at the end, like it all like you're like minimizing a lot and getting like the beneficial inputs as well. Because like yeah, I turn off my Wi-Fi, but I'm still getting all like my neighbor's Wi-Fi. So like it's never going to be perfect, but oh now I'm sleeping on a grounding sheet. So like you can like get the positive inputs and minimize the harmful ones from like all these different categories. And that way you'll probably end up being like in pretty good health overall.
Yeah, we don't have to be perfect
Yeah,
to improve
exactly.
our health, right? For 100%. And I think that, yeah, I hear you. Like sometimes we need to be extreme in extreme situations. My
Yeah.
my experience was extreme. I probably did need extremes for a little while, but you can't live there forever because
Yeah.
then, then what? Well, then what? Like you need to like have life. Like you need
Yeah.
to enjoy life. So
And I think if you have like serious health issues, you definitely have to go more extreme. It depends. Yeah, it just like depends on your starting point. Like if you're just trying to lose some weight, you don't have to go like super extreme. But if
yeah.
you do have like a serious health issue, then like yeah, you might have to like dial it in more and be like more extreme until you can like resolve whatever your issue may be.
100%, 100%. Well, Ethan, this has been so fun. We're getting towards the end here, and I want to make sure that we touch on everything you wanted to say. So, is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we didn't mention?
I think that might have been everything. I'll just say like big picture, you're just trying to reconnect with nature. That's like
Mhm.
all what this stuff is, just like reconnect with nature, like get outside and just live as close as you can with nature, and like your health should kind of take care of itself.
Definitely. I love that. I love that. And I always say the first step is reconnecting to nature, and then you reconnect to yourself because you start
Yeah,
like having more intuition and you become more aligned and you know what you want and all these like downloads come to you. So it really just it's like that pivot starting point that like lights a fire for everything else to go right in your life. So
yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
that. Tell people where they can find you, your book, information, all the things, because I'm excited to get your book. I don't have it yet,
Yeah,
but I will add it to my shelf. Read
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm most active, or basically only active on Instagram. It's quantum.dietitian.
Perfect.
You can find my books on my website. Like the link is in the URL. I'm sure you're gonna link it.
Yep.
Um, if you want hardcover books or like paper books, they're also on Amazon as well. If you're outside of the U.S., but if you're in the U.S., I just ship the paper books myself from my
Mm.
website. I do coaching one-on-one. If like you think I can help you with whatever issue you may have going on, feel free to reach out.
What
I'm
are
very
your ideal clients, Ethan, so people know? What are you looking for?
um I
Mm.
would say, yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
Mm.
I think I'll kind of work with anyone if, yeah, I'm not super picky, but I would say like I guess like on average, like a lot of my clients do follow like a certain theme, I guess.
Mhm.
And I would say I mostly work with people who have like maybe they're waking up in the middle of the night a couple of times. More like people who are trying to optimize. They're not necessarily unhealthy, but they still have issues. Maybe their testosterone's like a little bit low. They're
Mhm.
crashing in the middle of the day. Like they won't like if they went to like their doctor would be like, you're good. But they're still having like issues and they're trying to like figure out like those little things. So I would say like troubleshooting those like little things is kind of probably like what I specialize at. But again, I'm willing to kind of work with anyone, and if I can't help you, then I'll just say so up front.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that integrity. Well, this has been so awesome, Ethan. Thank you so much for chatting with us and joining us. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah.